Hi everyone, I'm going over chapters 10 through 13 in microbiology. This video will focus on chapter 11, which is the innate immunity. If you recall, the innate immunity is that ancient immunity system that is found in all organisms. And so yeah, let's get started with the first concept, which is antimicrobial peptides. Basically, they do what the name says. They're peptides, which means they're tiny proteins that are in your body, and they also they're antimicrobial, so they kill microbes. You can also think about this concept with the letters A, M, P. So I just remember that they amp up your immune system, and they do this by stimulating the leukocytes. Leukocytes are your white blood cells. So leuko is Greek for white, so yeah, they stimulate the white blood cells. They also directly target the pathogens, so they kill the pathogens in your body. This is part of the innate immune system, so remember, they don't target specific pathogens. They just see this foreign bacteria, and then they're like, oh, I'm going to kill it. So I think that's kind of cool, the AMP. Yeah, so the next concept is the lymphatic system, which is also part of your innate immune system. Your lymph filters your plasma, like it filters your blood, but it's not called blood in the lymph system. It's called lymph. So yeah, as the fluid in your body travels through the lymph, these little lymph nodes filter the stuff out. But anyway, the lymphatic system there's different organs, and they could be separated into two types, the primary and the secondary. The primary are your main ones because those are the ones in charge of making your lymphocytes. Lymphocytes are a type of white blood cell, and there are two types, the B cells and the T cells. And that's how I remember the primary lymphoid tissues, because the T cells are mature in your thymus and the B cells mature in your bone marrow. So just remember those two things, T and B, and then you can remember thymus and bone marrow. This is your thymus, and the bone marrow is like inside of your bones. The next lymphoid tissues are the secondary ones, which is basically everything else. So any lymphatic tissue that's not the thymus or the bone marrow is the secondary lymphoid tissue. So as you can see in the diagram, there's the adenoids, tonsils, the lymph nodes, the spleen, the Peyer's patches, the appendix. You might also need to know for the exam MALT. Basically, the MALT is like the mucosa lymphoid tissue, and so those are the adenoids and the tonsils, and also the Peyer's patches and the appendix. The Peyer's patches are found on your small intestines. The book also calls the MALT the GALT. So GALT meaning gut. So I don't know. It's kind of silly, but might be on the exam, MALT and GALT, and the secondary are anything that's not the thymus and the bone marrow. Okay, so next concept. This one is really complicated. There's 7 different types of white blood cells, and we need to memorize all of them. Our professor said that all of these are going to be on the exam, so make sure you know these. There are 2 types of white blood cells, the granulocytes and the agranulocytes. That's kind of an important concept because the granulocytes, these ones have granules, which are like little, little dots, grains inside of the blood cells. The agranulocytes, they don't have the granules. I don't know what those granules are exactly, but I kind of picture the granules as being like the histamine that some of these leukocytes release. So, because the basophils and the mast cells, they release histamine, which is part of the allergy system. And so I just think if it's a granulocyte, then it releases those little histamine granules. That's how I remember it. Let's see here. Neutrophils are probably the most important of the white blood cells because they are the most numerous, and they are also the first line of defense. They go in and they actually swallow up the pathogens, which is kind of cool. They interact directly with the bacteria and viruses. Another thing, we might need to know the most common white blood cells to the least common as far as number in your body. There is one mnemonic that is never let monkeys eat bananas. Never let monkeys eat bananas. Never let monkeys eat bananas. And that talks about the commonality of the different leukocytes. So never are the neutrophils. They're the most numerous. Let lymphocytes are the second. Monkeys, so the monocytes are third. Eat, eosinophils are fourth, and bananas, basophils are the least common of the leukocytes. Other thing to keep note is they have, each of these leukocytes have different nuclei or nucleus, and yeah, it's I just look at this picture over and over to remember. Neutrophils are multilobed, so you can see there's a bunch of different nucleus. Eosinophils are bilobed, so there's two of them, and some people think they look like earmuffs, like they're like two earmuffs around someone's head. The basophils are also bilobed. And then the eosinophils are red. You can't really tell in this picture, but apparently they are redder than the other ones, which are like more dark purple. Like I said earlier, basophils and mast cells release histamine, and the monocyte has interesting nucleus. It's a horseshoe shaped. Also, monocytes turn into macrophages, which is really important for you to know. And then here we have the lymphocytes that are like the B cells and the T cells. There's also the natural killer cells, which I think has like the coolest name as far as something in your body, like natural killer cell. Like that's probably the coolest cell, at least as far as like the name goes. Oh, and I accidentally skipped the dendritic cell. Way to remember that is like they have like these little dendrites, like appendage, like tentacle things, which they like use to grab and attack pathogens. Cool. It's a lot to remember, so just like go over this over and over and over and over and over again. Like I'll like go over it while I'm waiting for the shuttle. Just keep it in your pocket, like this little thing, and just keep going over it. The other topic I want to go over are cytokines. So cytokines are like the cells release them, and they like send signals to other cells. And how I remember, what just happened? How I remember it is they signal other cells, so I think of like a cell signal, and then I think of these as the lines, so they're the cytolines instead of cytokines. So when you see cytokines, think of cytolines, and then think of the lines in the cell signal. At least that's how I remember it. The next concept I want to go over are the interleukins. Interleukins are a type of cytokine, and there are two types of interleukins, IL-1 and IL-2, and they both do different things. And how I remember them is I think of the 1 in interleukin 1, and it reminds me of the letter I, and that's what they do. They're in charge of inflammation and immunity. So just remember IL-1, the letter I, because the 1 is shaped like an I, and then they do inflammation and immunity. Hopefully that helps. IL-2, I think of 2 being like the letter T in 2, because they're in charge of the T cell development, and they're also in charge of self-tolerance. So when your body makes your immune cells, they have to be self-tolerant. What that means is your immune cells can't attack your own cells, or that would be terrible. So the IL-2 is helpful for the self-tolerance process for your immune cells. Also, IL-2 is part of the apoptosis. Apoptosis is programmed cell death, and you can maybe remember that by thinking apoptosis. So apoptosis, think apoptosis, because it's involved in IL-2. All right, the next concept are interferons. Interferons are another type of cytokine. So they're part of the cell signaling. So interferons are released by cells that are infected by viruses, and they basically tell neighboring cells like, hey, warning, warning, amp up your immune system. So yeah, so they're pretty cool. Anyway, you could remember interferons because they interfere with virus replication. And then these are the different things that the interferons can do. Cool. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about are the signs of inflammation. Inflammation can do these 5 things. This is how you recognize someone has inflammation. And the way I remember it is it spells pearls. So pearls, a sign of inflammation are pain, redness, localized heat, loss of function, and swelling. So just think pearls, and then these 5 things: pain, redness, localized heat, loss of function, and swelling. Next concept is margination. Margination is when your neutrophils, they're in your blood, and they're like, oh wait, there's some action going on here, like this nail, and like different bacteria are coming in. So the neutrophils they need to get in there. And what they do is they do margination. And margination, it means the white blood cells just go to the wall of the blood vessel. And the way I remember it, it's pretty simple. Margin, when you think of the margin, like the side, like the margin of the page is the side of the page. So think that they're going to the side of the wall in the blood vessel. The next concept is diapedesis, which basically it's pretty cool. The white blood cell squeezes through the cell wall of the blood vessel, and in order to travel to the site of the inflammation. And how I remember diapedesis is I see the word ped, and ped you could think of like pedal or like your feet, ped, and like pedestrian, they walk by like with their feet. And yeah, diapedesis, I think of feet because the white blood cells, it's like they're walking towards the site of inflammation. The next concept is chemotaxis, and chemotaxis is how the cells know where to go, because these things are kind of just like traveling around randomly, but like there's these chemicals that these white blood cells are like attracted to. They're like, oh, I should go this way. And so you could think chemicals for like chemo, and then taxis, I think of taxis, like taxis get you to where you need to go. So chemotaxis is how white blood cells get to where they need to go through the chemicals. Pretty cool. Other concept is pyrogen. Basically, pyrogen are things in your body that cause fever. And so, yeah, an easy way to remember that is pyro is fire, fire is hot, and heat when it's throughout your body is fever. So yeah, that's chapter 11. Hope that was helpful. If you know a way to remember leukocyte as white blood cell, leave it in the comment below. I'm kind of curious. And yeah, that's about it. And I guess I'll see you in the next video. Bye.